What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over how you can get easy wins in Fortnite Season 3. This is going to be like some strategies and how you want to play to get wins this season. This isn't going to cover fighting as much. I have other videos on that topic. This is just the things you want to do during the match. If you guys do find this video helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below where your favorite place to land has been so far this season. And that's going to be the first thing we talk about is landing spots. And there's, countless good spots you can land on the map to get wins. Two that I'm going to highlight and talk about are going to be Sun Swoon Lagoon. This is where you had to do a lot of the summer challenges, so I'm sure many of you are aware of this location, but the summer challenges are gone as of the time I'm uploading this video, so there likely won't be as many players here anymore, and it has a decent amount of loot. And the Meowscles NPC can sell a purple Havoc pump. So you can land here, get a solid amount of loot, likely get some shield, buy a purple pump, and then there's also this rift statue that will allow you to rift over towards Rumble Ruins. And then from Rumble Ruins, you can clean up this POI. Typically, there will still be people here fighting as you rift here, but you can also hire the Insight NPC, which is on top of Rumble Ruins, and eliminate the Relic boss to get the mythic MK7. And there's even a door underneath Rumble Ruins that you can open using his gauntlets that aren't very good. And then in here, you'll get several chests and several legendary chests, and this is where you're going to get a bulk of your loot. So like Sun Swoon Lagoon wasn't that much loot, but it was an okay starting amount of loot, and you get that purple pump. And then you rift here, get the mythic MK, get the Insight NPC, which can mark enemy opponents, like I think every 45 seconds. And then you open the door, and then you get a lot of loot. And this will likely be where you'll get some utility. There will be times where you open this and there's just no utility at all in this vault, like shockwaves or porta bunkers. But more often than not, you're going to get at least some of those items because there's several legendary chests. And legendary chests have double like utility or heal spawn, so you get 2 of those items for every chest. So it would be very unlikely that you open this vault and just get nothing, although it can happen. So that's going to be one of the landing spots. The other one is going to be on this munitions expert NPC at the gas station outside Kenjutsu Crossing. This NPC, when hired, can drop you bunkers and shockwaves if you have that item out when she goes to give you ammo. So people have said it's been patched because it didn't work for them or whatever. She doesn't just give you ammo 24/7. There's like a cooldown for it. So if you have your AR out and she gives you ammo, you have to wait until her next drop to be able to get shockwaves or bunkers. So it matters which item you have out, and if you have out like the augment or the pickaxe, I think she just gives you like random trash. And if you're full on these items, she just gives you like random trash or something that you're not full on. So this still very much works, and it's very good in zero build because bunkers and shockwaves are very important. Not the most loot at this gas station, but you can kind of loot this, the area around it, and then kind of up towards the volcano mountain. And after doing that, you should be able to get a decent amount of loot and be able to play the match out. Both of these locations, though, are spots where you kind of land here and get some loot and then continue to loot something else. It's not like a spot where you just land there, get all your loot, and then just, camp for the rest of the game. And I do have recent Inside the Mine videos I made where I landed at each of these locations and played out a full match and won while explaining my thought process. So if you are interested in how I play any of these spots, those videos are out there on my channel. The next thing we're going to talk about are vaults. These were a very big deal last season, and they're still very good, but they're not as important to me this season. One, they're not guaranteed. They spawn at 3 locations each match, but the locations they spawn at change from game to game. It's just kind of random. So there might be games where there's a high card vault in your area that you're able to get, but for both of these landing locations I recommended, it's pretty inconvenient to get to the vaults in time. But even then, it's not that big of a deal to me because the Mythic Flapjack is good, but it's not as big of a deal to me as the Mythic Havoc Pump was. I thought the Mythic Havoc Pump was incredible last season, and it was something that I always wanted to get. Even after it was nerfed a little bit, it was still very good. Mythic Flapjack isn't that way to me. It's a solid weapon, but it's not like a huge deal. It is nice to get this for the slurp juice and the extra loot as well. There's several legendary chests which can give you like shockwaves or bunkers, which is nice. I'll get the vault if I can, but it's not as big of a deal to me as it was last season, especially because you can get slurp juice from the combat cache, which is something I have been going for much more this season than last. I kind of talked about how last season I always wanted to get the vault for the Mythic Havoc Pump, so there wasn't as much of a need for me to get the combat cache. These spawn in at 3rd zone, and they give you a Havoc Pump plus either an SMG or an MK at a rarity corresponding to how quickly you started capturing it. So if you get there incredibly fast and it's gold, you're going to get a guaranteed gold pump and then either a gold SMG or a gold MK. It's just very good. The pump is guaranteed. The second weapon alternates between an SMG and an MK. You also get several other heals, and you get slurps. And this is why I don't care as much about the vaults, because I've been liking the combat cache anyways to get a guaranteed gold or purple pump. It can be inconvenient to get gold this season because there's not that much mobility in the game. But purple, you have a decent amount of time to get it purple, and that still a purple pump is very solid. So I definitely recommend going for the combat cache, and the slurp juice is nice since I haven't been getting as many high card vaults this season as I was last season, and you still definitely want the slurp juice because it's the best healing item in the game right now. So it's just very, very good. Since they always spawn at third zone, one thing you can do if you're in the jungle is kind of get to one of the rift statues a little bit before third zone opens, and then just the moment third zone starts, you use the rift, and then see where your cache is, and then glide towards that. And typically I'm able to get it at gold rarity if I do this. There are times where it's like spawns very far away for whatever reason, and then even with the rift I'm not able to get there in time. But typically if I hit the rift exactly as third zone is starting, I'm able to get my combat cache at gold rarity, get a gold pump, and then either like a gold MK or SMG. Whether or not I use that is up in the air, but the pump is something that I definitely want. Unfortunately, with how the game is this season, there will be times where you don't have, or you're super low on utility or mobility, and typically what I do when that is the case is I loot the rift statues in the jungle, and you can kind of rift from statue to statue, and these spawn legendary chests, so it's 2 shots at something that you want. You know, you might get a medkit and shockwaves, you might get a big pot and shockwaves, you might get a big pot and minis. Like, it is kind of random what you'll get, but it's still 2 utility chances is pretty nice. You can also try to loot areas that are more low-key or ignored. You know, just a random house or 2 might be unlooted, and that could potentially give you what you need. Also, rifting around in the jungle, you can kind of see into the trees, and maybe you'll see like shockwaves or bunkers there. Potentially any high card vaults that are left unopened. Again, these might be inconvenient to get to, but with the rift statues, you should be able to get there pretty quick. And also, while I'm rifting around looking for things like that, if I hear any fights and I'm really low on mobility or utility, I will try to third party that in hopes to get something to scavenge from those players. You know, if 2 players are fighting, you're able to third party it and clean up the fight. Maybe you'll get some shockwaves or bunkers out of it. Sometimes you aren't going to find anything, and this is just one of the things that makes this season not as fun as last. I feel like with last season and the season before, you kind of looted, and then you got your katana, or you got your hammer, you got your weapons, and you were just kind of playing the game from that point forward. Whereas this season, you kind of constantly need to be concerned about like having bunkers or having shockwaves, because they're not like a renewable resource how they were last season. Fortnite.gg is a website that shows you where everything is on the map, and you can find the rift statues on here and learn where these are. I think it's very important, not only for getting around the map quickly. If you're someone who hates the jungle, you can just bypass the jungle using them essentially. But also, when you're low on utility like this, I feel like going around to each of these things can be a nice way to potentially get loot and get those utility items that you need. The island this season is something I try to avoid. I think last season it was very much worth going for because of how insane the overclocked pulse rifle is. And while the mythic drum is good, I don't think it's as ridiculous to play against as the pulse rifle was. Like, the pulse rifle was good at like every range, and it was very irritating to play against, whereas the mythic drum, as long as you're not in barrel stuff range, it's not the best weapon. So I don't really have as much of a problem playing against the mythic drum as the pulse rifle. It's just like, it's not as oppressive as a weapon. It's still very good, but it's more one-dimensional than the pulse rifle, I think. And then also with how the loot pool of this season, I feel like the fights on island are just a lot more random. One, you're probably going to have to use shockwaves or bunkers if you have them. That's wasting your utility, and potentially you're not going to get it back. And we just kind of talked about how important it is. And then also, I feel like just like the drum shotty is very annoying to play against, and I feel like the fights on island are going to be fights where the drum shotty shines. Like, if you're on the roof and someone riffs onto you, if you're on the flag and someone riffs onto you, you're probably going to get to the roof at the same time as them, and then they're just barrel stuffing you with a drum shotty or potentially the exotic maven. Whereas last season, with the drum shotty not being in the game, I just felt like these fights on island played out differently. Also, people just shockwaving around up here with the explosive repeater. I just feel like a lot of the fights on the island this season are something I just want to completely avoid. You can go for it if you want to get kills, but if you're just trying to win, I don't think it's as necessary as it was last season. So I typically just try to avoid the island this season. Dead side rotates are typically going to be the easiest way to make it to endgame. This basically just means you try to be on the side of zone where it's less likely for other players to be, or where it's most inconvenient for players to be. This is another reason why learning where the rift statues are is nice, because if you rift, you can kind of get a decent amount of progress to where you want to be on the map. And this is very simple. It's just like wherever is most inconvenient for people to be in zone, that's typically going to be the less populated area. In this example here, I have a zone that's the top right corner of the map, and you can see this edge of zone nearest to the center is pretty populated because most of the map has to flow through there to get to the zone. Like if you just look at this map, that like corner is obviously going to be the most contested side of zone. So if you like were to go around where the green arrow is and then get to the top of the zone, you're going to have an easier game, even though you're not immediately getting to safe zone. I feel like this is one thing that a lot of newer players struggle with, is they just want to immediately get to the safe zone and they don't really think about, the safer way to do so. And if you are proactive in game, you'll usually have time to like kind of go around like this. It's not like the zone instantly teleports. You usually have a minute or so to get where you need to get. And then you have the travel time as well. So if you were to go around like where the green arrow is, you're likely going to not only avoid that really congested layer, but you're going to be playing from a more dead side of zone, and that's going to make it much easier for you to play the game out from there. Or if you just happen to be in brutal already, your game is going to be much easier. But avoiding those congested side of zones will often help you avoid those situations where you're just getting chain third-partied. Obviously, Fortnite is a game where everyone can make their own decisions, so sometimes you might do the right thing to avoid a congested side of zone, and you still run into several people. It just is how it is. But typically, getting to the dead side of zone is going to be the easiest way for you to make it endgame. Also, there could be times where you want to control power positions, depending on what the zone is and, how late in the game it is. Something like Citadel would be a good example of this. Like if you have a game-ending Citadel, then the person on top of the castle is going to have control over that game. And especially with the explosive repeater rifle in the game, it's very easy for that player top castle to be a nuisance. This could be, a house that's in zone, a castle that's in zone, a mountain that's in zone. There's pretty much always going to be some ideal like power position in zone, and kind of identifying these things and controlling them is an important skill to have for consistently winning. And it mostly just comes down to map knowledge. There could be games where it's very populated, and if that's the case, then controlling the power positions might not be the best choice, because you might get just like chain third party to one person fights you. But typically for public matches, that isn't going to be the case. Endgame is pretty much just all situational. Like it's hard to give just blanket advice that's always true, but I just try to keep track of how many people are left alive and where the people I know about are. If we have 3 people left in the game, and I know 2 of them are to my right, and I don't know anything about what's going on like the left side of zone, it's fairly likely that last person is over there. And then the same thing is true. If you have 2 opponents left and they're both on the right side of the zone, then you can kind of more tunnel vision that side of zone. But just like I said, it's very situational. Really, all you can do is think about where people are likely to be, how many people are left alive, and then kind of how many unknowns you have, and then play from there, and just kind of play to not overextend yourself or get too tunnel visioned on one thing. Also, in zero build pubs, most games are going to end by first moving. So if you're able to get to the zone first and hold the rest of the lobby, usually you're going to have a pretty easy time, especially this season with the lack of utility that players have. The moving zone is going to be when it like travels into the storm, and then an area that was previously unplayable becomes playable. If you get there first, that like there's nobody else there because it was just in the storm, and then you can hold the rest of the lobby, and typically there's not going to be that many people left alive at this point in the game. And a lot of players, especially like newer players, get very nervous in game and just kind of do nothing and wait until the last possible second to move, and then it's going to be very easy for you to capitalize on it. But like I said, in game is just very, very situational. Every game is different, and it just takes real I feel like trial and error and also experience in those situations to really know how to play them. That's also one of the reasons why those Inside the Mind videos I talked about earlier are so good, because it's much easier to kind of learn when I'm explaining something in an end game rather than just in a video like this. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative. I tried to kind of go over spots I enjoy landing at, some of the key problems you might have this season, and what you want to do during the game to try to fix those problems. If you guys did find it helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below where your favorite place to land has been, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.